Hey, how's it going everyone? So last week I bought a couple of graphics cards that I want to share with you guys, so just give me a second. So this is the MSI Ventus 3X 3090. This is the Palette Gaming Pro 3080. Now, normally I wouldn't be buying two cards, but the 3080 was available first, and that was $1,500, so I got that. And then the 3090 became available, and that was only $300 more. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll give the 3090 a shot, seeing as it has 24 gigabytes of video memory. So I ended up picking up both of them. Normally I wouldn't be buying $1,500 graphics cards, but because mining is pretty profitable at the moment, I thought, okay, well, I'll give mining a shot as well, see if I can make some of my money back on these cards. And if I don't, it's not a big deal, because then I will sell one of these cards. But that would be a bit annoying, because it's pretty hard to sell these cards where I am. Okay, so I also have a 3070, which I picked up about a month ago, and that's been pretty good so far. So now I got all three of them. Now the last couple of days I've been using the 3080 and the 3090, and I want to talk a little bit about my experience with them. And also I noticed that the 3090 and also the 3080, they get particularly hot. So I don't think it's such a good idea to be mining with the 3090, and also you got to be watching out when you're playing games as well, and we'll talk about that today. So I just want to touch on the video that I made a week ago, which was the 3080 Ti versus the 3090 video. And in that video I said that well, maybe people should start thinking about a 3090 instead of a 3080, given how close the prices were, and also you can SLI the 3090. And if you're going to be mining, then you can just have those two 3090s mining together. Now, in hindsight, that's pretty bad advice, given that I didn't have the card. And sometimes I give, well, I wouldn't say advice, but more like I'm thinking about things in theoretical terms. So technically, yes, you can SLI two 3090s, but is it a really good idea? Well, no, not really. And I'm going to put some video up on the screen now, because this was a video I just took from my PC. And as you can see, I've got a 3090 there at the top and a 3070 under it. And as you can see, it's very tight. So I guess most motherboard manufacturers, they allow 3 slots. It's not a very good idea, because there's not a lot of airflow to get into that 3090. So honestly, probably a very bad idea. And you know what? I'm going to take that video down. I've already decided I'm going to take a video down, because the temperatures get very hot, and this isn't like it's going to be 60 degrees to 70 degrees. We're talking like 100 degrees here. So you can probably potentially fry your 3090 if you're going to do that. Okay, let's get on to today's video, and let's take a look at this information here, which says what are safe temperatures for mining. And I know this is not to do with gaming, but we'll get into gaming in a second. Now, essentially it says here the 56 degrees to 71 degrees is the sweet spot, and that's where you want your temperatures for your GPU to be around about. And the first time I ran this with the 3090 and the 3070, I was ending up with about 76 degrees, which I decided to check online to this piece of information, and it says here between for 76 degrees temperature is safe, but you'll experience slightly lower hash rates in this range. Why? Your GPUs self-regulate their clock speeds down throttle here as a safety measure. Now, if you're getting to around 100 to 109 degrees or 110 degrees, basically this table is saying that it's highly unsafe to be doing that, and you could be risking your GPUs. Now, just to show you guys some temperatures that I got from the mining, as you can see, I was actually mining with 2 cards for a little bit, just to see how they would play, and that was with the 2 cards very close together. So the 3090 wasn't getting any airflow. You can see here the 3090 was at around 74 degrees, whereas the 3070 was around 58 degrees. Now, normally when I'm mining with the 3070, I'm getting about 55 degrees, and if I downclock it a little bit, I can get it down to about 50 or even under 50 degrees. So that's where I like to keep it as low as possible, because we don't want too much heat generated, and we're also using excessive power as well. Now, I thought that was a bit interesting that there was such a big difference between the 3090 and the 3070. Maybe there was something up with the 3090 that I wasn't aware about. And so I also tested the 3090 in a single card. So I took out the 3070 and immediately the temperatures dropped by about 10 degrees. So it went down to about 65 degrees after I took that 3070 out. So definitely don't have something obstructing the airflow. Just have the single card in your system when you're mining. And also, you know, you can take your panels out and all that sort of thing, point a fan at it to keep the temperatures cool. Now, even though it was 66 degrees, that's still a little bit higher than the 3070, which I can get it down to about 55 to even 50 degrees if I'm underclocking the card. So what's going on here? So then I decided to do a little bit of digging around, and I found this article on Tom's Hardware, which says G6X in 3080 and 3090 hits 110 degrees while mining Ethereum. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's not good. So essentially, HW Info 64, which does a lot of censoring information on your temperatures in your system, as well as a lot of other things like clock speeds, it just had an update which shows the G6X memory junction temperature. So if you have a 3080 and a 3090, you should go and download this program and check out what your temperatures are. After some testing with the new HW Info 64 version 6.42, we validated these same high VRAM temperatures that Igor discovered looping Metro Exodus at 4K ultra settings for several minutes on RTX 3080 Founders Edition allowed the G6X modules to hit a peak temperature of 102 degrees. The TJ Max for G6X is 95 degrees. Now it goes on to cite Igor's lab, so I went to Igor's lab to take a look at what they had to say as well. Essentially, the documentation for Micron, it doesn't explain G6X or what the maximum temperatures for G6X should be, because in the documentation it still lists stuff about G5. And Igor's lab decided to ask a lot of people, ask some colleagues about this, and they came to the conclusion, it says here, it was unanimously agreed that the maximum temperature or T total before the start of a possible destruction of the chip should be 120 degrees, and that T junction should probably be at 105 degrees for the G6X. Even at 110 degrees is specified as the maximum value. Now let's take a look at some screen grabs so I can show you some results that I got from temperatures when I was mining. And as you can see here, on the right hand side, HW Info 64, the GPU temperature for the 3090 was 56 degrees, so that's a pretty good temperature for mining. But if you take a look at this GPU memory junction temperature, that's at 92 degrees, and I think that's really hot, and the maximum here was 102 degrees, so that is just way hotter than you really should be operating at. And I think I'm going to change out the thermal pads and see if I can get this temperature down a little bit. But to reproduce that, these were my settings here in MSI Afterburner, and I had 75% on the power limit, and the core clock was minus 150 megahertz, and I turned the memory clock slider way down to the maximum it could go, which was about 500 megahertz or minus 500 megahertz, and you're still getting 92 degrees on those memory modules. Now, if we take a look at what happens in gaming, this is Cyberpunk 2077, which is one of the most intensive games out there, and I only had the chance to try it for about 10 minutes, but even still, it was pretty steady at around 66 degrees, around 66 to 70 degrees, that's what it was when I was playing Cyberpunk 2077 for about 10-15 minutes. And you can see the maximum there was 80 degrees. Now, what about the RTX 3080? Because that also has G6X inside. So my GPU temperature is about 50 degrees, and my GPU memory junction temperature is 80 degrees. There's a maximum of 90 degrees, but now I've got it pretty steady at about 80 degrees. So here are my settings for the 3080, and I had 65% as the power limit. My core clock was my undervolting curve, and the memory clock was about plus 6 megahertz, and so effectively zero basically. But that at least helps me bring the temperatures down, and I'd much rather take a little bit longer mining my money and have a GPU at the end of the day than one that breaks down after like 4 or 5 months. Now, why does the 3090 have a much higher temperature for its VRAM modules? And that's because it has VRAM modules on both sides of the PCB. So as you can see here, this is the MSI Gaming X Trio. I couldn't find the PCB for the Ventus 3X. So as you can see here, the 12 gigabytes of VRAM modules on the front, around the core, and then there's 12 gigabytes also on the back. And this is the RTX 3080, and this is the Palette Gaming Pro PCB. And as you can see, there's 10 gigabytes on the front, and there isn't anything on the back. And so if you have VRAM modules together, well, that's just going to be a lot hotter than if you have a single VRAM chip on one side of the board. So because it's 3090 and I still want to game with it, and I'm going to try and fix this up to see if I can get it to work any better. So I'm going to change out the thermal pads, and this is what I got. I got these Thermalright thermal pads, and I got them in 0.5 millimeter thickness, 2 millimeter thickness, and 3 millimeter thickness. And the 0.5 is really there so that I can add that on top of the two in case I need 2.5 millimeter. But just having a look at the video card, just looking at the card, I can kind of see through to where the thermal pads are if I'm looking through here. So so that's how I estimated how much, and I just roughly used a ruler to measure how much I needed, and I know exactly where those memory modules are. So I decided to measure all that to make sure I get just the right number of packets of these thermal pads. Okay, so just to round up, I think the 3090 gets very hot, both for mining and for gaming. You saw with Tom's Hardware's article for gaming in Metro Exodus, they got over 100 degrees with this. For Cyberpunk 2077, for me, it got to about 80 degrees, but it could potentially go higher than that. But for mining, it was around 92 degrees, even after I underclocked it. If you like this video, make sure to click the like button, also to subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one.